Hi, today we're going to take a look at the new Irix 45mm T1.5 Cine lens. So let's see what it can do. Over to you, Mitch.
Thanks, Ido. Today we're going to review our first Cine lens, and it comes from the Swiss-Polish manufacturer Irix, which recently started making lenses for the video industry in different mounts. This is their most recent offering in this line, which at the moment includes 3 lenses: an ultra-wide-angle 11mm T4.3 lens, a telephoto 150mm T3 macro lens, and the one that we will be looking at today, the 45mm T1.5 lens. All of the lenses from Irix's Cine line are optically based on the company's photo lenses in a rehoused body. Sigma has done a similar thing with its relatively new Cine line of lenses. Before we dive deeper into the lens itself and its performance, we do want to say that we were recently criticized for doing a number of full-frame lens reviews using cropped Sony bodies. We're happy to report that we finally got our Sony A7R IV camera, and future reviews on full-frame lenses will be done using this camera, including, of course, this review. So let's take a closer look at the Irix 45mm Cine lens, and we shall start with the build and design of the lens. The lens is fully metal and feels extremely robust in the hand. It comes with a small foot that you can screw to the bottom, or surprisingly, to the top of the lens. We got the foot, but for some reason Irix forgot to send the screws with our pre-production unit. This is a pretty substantial lens, at least by Sony E-mount standards. It's almost 14 centimeters long, 5.5 inches, and the front portion is 9 centimeters or 3.5 inches wide, which means that connected to our A7R IV, it has about 1 centimeter extra height. The E-mount version that we've got has a somewhat of a narrow ending to fit the mount. You really need to watch how you hold this thing, so you won't damage your camera's mount with this lens, as it weighs almost 1.2 kilos or close to 42 ounces. The lens has 2 rings with 0.8 gears. Both rings are quite narrow for some reason, at around 1/4 of an inch wide. It would be nicer if these were thicker, even if you are using a follow focus, and surely if you're going to work with at least one of them manually. The throw on the focus ring is about 180 degrees, and on our lens there are clear markings in meters from 0.4 meters and up to 3 meters. The focus ring has some nice resistance to it and feels pretty solid. The aperture ring on our pre-production unit was not as smooth, but talking to Irix, we understand that this should be fixed once the production unit hits the street. Do note that the markings on the lens are white, but they don't glow in the dark, which is strange since Irix's 11mm f4 photo lens has this feature. Being a manual-only lens, the 45mm T1.5 has no buttons or switches. According to Irix, the lens has sealing in 5 places, 4 on the PL version, including the mount. Talking about the mounts, this lens comes in a PL, Canon EF, Micro Four Thirds, and an E-mount, which is the one we tested. The lens comes with a nice plastic hood. The only drawback on our unit is that it's magnetic and doesn't seem to lock. We're not sure if this is a prototype thing or a design decision. In any case, never try and grab the lens from the hood. This lens has a huge front element, 95mm, but the actual filter thread is only 86mm. The reason behind this is possibly to make the filter size similar to the other lenses in the Irix Cine line. We tested the sharpness of the lens using our special large professional Imatest high-end chart, which we started using late last year with our recent Sigma and Samyang lens reviews. As you can see, wide open the image both in the center and corners is fairly sharp, but contrast isn't very good. Closing down to T2.8 brings a huge improvement, and at T4 there is another slight improvement for very good image quality. Just for fun, we also compared the Irix to the Samyang 45mm f1.8 that we have from our previous review, this time on the A7R IV of course, and as you can see, the Samyang is sharper and has much better contrast wide open at f1.8 across the frame. Of course, these are 2 very different lenses, they just happen to have the same focal length and fairly similar apertures. The Irix does seem to bring in a lot more light though. The minimum focus distance of the lens is about 24 centimeters or 9.4 inches, and the lens is quite sharp in the center at this range. You gain a little bit of extra sharpness at around T4. We tested how much the focus affects the framing of the image, and as you can see, this lens does have some breathing, although it seems to be relatively well controlled. But you can judge for yourselves if you think that this is acceptable or not. The lens has minimal longitudinal chromatic aberration according to our tests wide open. It seems to go away completely when closing down to T2.8. Wide open vignette is prominent, and to avoid it you will need to close down to around T.4 with this lens. As you might expect from a 45mm lens, it has no visible barrel or pincushion distortion. Wide open in the center, light circles are round with inner rings that are not too prominent, and closer to the edge you are getting the familiar lemon-shaped light circles. Although we didn't have a chance to shoot any commercial projects with the Irix during our time with it, we did some test shots, mostly with our new tilter follow focus units, and it worked well. The Irix 45mm T1.5 Cine is an interesting option. It's well built with an all-metal construction, has relatively low breathing, very minimal chromatic aberration, no visible barrel or pincushion distortion, and the sharpness and contrast if you close down to around T2.8 is very good. As with any product, there are always downsides, and in this case we're talking about a fairly large and heavy lens, although in the category these are not considered special. Contrast wide open is lacking, and you will need to close down at least a stop for better image quality, and vignette is also quite prominent up to T4. These downsides need to be taken into consideration in the context of price, and this lens is actually very affordable for a Cine lens, selling for under $1,200. The PL version costs an extra $100. Back to you, Ido.
So that was our look at the Irix 45mm T1.5 Cine lens. You can read the full review on lensvid.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to find more videos just like this. See you next time.